Well, good evening YouTube, and today's video is not about photography. It's about YouTube and designing a good thumbnail. Now, I might not have a YouTube silver play button or indeed a fantastically huge following on my channel, but there is one thing I do know about, and that's graphic design. Now, it goes without saying, if you design a great thumbnail, you've got more chance of people clicking on your video and watching it. You don't actually need to have a degree in graphic design, just follow these simple tips. But first, let's look at the average click-through rate on YouTube. It's as low as 0.33%, with YouTube rating anything from 2 to 10% as being really good. Here are some examples of 3 thumbnails from my own videos, and you can see that the click-through rate on these videos are fairly high. One of them's a fairly recent video, and what does tend to happen is your initial click-through rate is quite high, and then it does fall back a little bit, or certainly that's what I've found. But one of them there, I've got over 1,000 views, and it's still circulating at 8% click-through rate, which I think is pretty good, and the other ones are slightly higher than that. So I think partly that's down to the thumbnail. A thumbnail is just one of those reasons why people click on a video. The title and of course the content are the other two. However, it could be your thumbnail that differentiates your video from 2 other very similar videos, and yours is the one that gets watched. So, what are my tips for designing a great thumbnail? Number 1, keep it simple. Condense your title down to 3 to 4 words. Try and stick to that. If you do need to add extra text, make that a subheading, so it's smaller text, and that will be something that people may not particularly read at first. They may choose to read it afterwards, but it won't take away from the impact of your initial statement. Step 2, pick a relevant image. It's fairly obvious, but keep the main image relevant to the title of the video. If your video is, for example, on taking photographs of garden birds, then no surprise what your main image is going to be. If you are presenting or fronting the video about your own personal photography or your own personal project, whatever, then consider having your face in the thumbnail. This helps viewers to connect to you as a person and as a presenter, even if you have a face like the last spud in the bag like me. Step 3. Now this is a bit of a long one, but it's an important one. It's all about typography. What's typography, you may ask? Well, it's the study and the style of the printed word. Okay, so we're not printing words here, but the rules still apply. Use simple, bold fonts. Now, that seems obvious, but you'd be surprised how many thumbnails I see which are using quite difficult to read fonts. I particularly avoid serif fonts. What's a serif, you might ask? Well, serif fonts, like things like Times New Roman, they're designed to help your eye read through pages and pages of dense text. So a novel like this will have a serif font used within it, and it helps your eye pick out characters. So newspapers, for example, in the body text, they'll use a serif font. As I said, novels, paperback books, that type of thing. We're not going to be using dense text on our thumbnails, so we won't need to use a serif font. Only if you really think that it benefits the design, you want to suggest that something is classical or something similar, something historic, then perhaps you want to use a Roman style font. Instead, for maximum impact, we want to be looking at the type of fonts that are used on newspaper headlines or road signage, for example. These fonts are designed to be really easy to read and understand at a moment's notice. So for example, if you're a Mac user, you'll be familiar with Helvetica. PC users, Arial, pretty much the same font. Very bold font. You can use that very good for signage and clear communication. Now, I've been very serious there about fonts, but don't be too critical. Don't be too hard on yourself. If you want to use a fun font for, say, something like you're doing a Halloween video, you want to put a spooky font on there, then go ahead, do it. Just make sure that it's clear and legible and you can read it when the thumbnail is quite small. Another point to consider when you design your thumbnail is it is easy for your eye to read text if it's in a block rather than going right the way across the thumbnail itself. This also leaves you plenty of space to add a decent punchy image. So consider stacking the title rather than having them run it right the way across to your thumbnail. This may mean you can make the words bigger and therefore more legible. And lastly, on the subject of typography, give the main emphasis to the most important words in your thumbnail. So this can be easy if it's, for example, the word free, nice and short. Not quite so easy if it's chrysanthemum. But you'll have to pick and choose what you give the emphasis to and try and still make the important words in the thumbnail the most prominent ones. I guess most of you guys watching this will be actually photographers, and you'll probably have access to the likes of Photoshop to create your thumbnails in. However, if you don't have access to something like Photoshop or another image manipulation program with typography as part of it, then don't worry, you can go online and use the app Canva, or you can use something everyday like the likes of PowerPoint, for example, and create a thumbnail that way. Thumbnails can be easy to get wrong, no doubt about it, and they can hold a good video back. The last thing you want to do as a new channel is for people not to see your videos. So please, I hope this has been helpful, giving you some tips on designing your thumbnails. If it has, give us a thumbs up and even consider subscribing to the channel. If you want to watch a couple more of my videos, I'll be putting a link right now. Thanks for watching. Now go out and create some killer thumbnails.